right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 16 of Neck Up Live. My name is Jeff Ramey with my co-host Eugene Collins. And our guest this evening is Mr. Geno Ford, the head basketball coach at Stony Brook University. So welcome to the show, Geno.
Thanks, Jeff.
Welcome aboard, my man.
Hey, good to see you again, Geno, man.
Yeah.
All right. Geno was a 1993 graduate of Cambridge High School. And in 1993, you were named Ohio's Mr. Basketball. Finished your career with 2,680 points, which was number 2 all time in Ohio, which you're currently number 5. And that puts you, I think, one spot ahead of the NBA's all-time leading scorer, LeBron James.
Well, I didn't have any assists, so there were none of those tallied on there. He actually passed, and I think it's worked out okay for him.
Yes. So, Geno, you grew up in Cambridge, and you were under the same roof as a legendary player and coach, your father, Gene Ford. Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood, what it was like growing up in Cambridge, and what it was like having a father and playing for your father, and just give us some insight on that?
Well, every day was interesting. He was a funny guy. He made a lot of people laugh. If you played for him, he really challenged you and really pushed you. And his dad was a coal miner, so he grew up, without much, to be honest, and was the first person in the family to ever go away to college. And he never got away from that blue collar mentality and the coal miner mentality. And so even though he was a teacher and coach, he was hard. He was hard on everybody. He was very demanding. I could count on 0 fingers how many times he ever said "good game" or anything like that. I mean, he wasn't to pat you on the back and tell you, "Hey, nice try. I really appreciate you trying." It wasn't that kind of a deal. But he was a great coach, and I think he got a lot out of his teams. That was pretty obvious by his record, and I think guys really liked playing for him. And if I took one thing from the coaching side of it, it was more if the guys like you, you can push them and be demanding, and they'll respond. And it wasn't him versus us when I played for him. It felt like me versus him a lot because I grew up there. I got coached at home too. If I had to move that damn wood pile in the yard one more time, I think we're going to fist fight. But yeah, he was, and he couldn't sit still, which was really probably the hardest quality he had, because he would just, "Hey, hop in the car, let's go for a ride." We would just ride around town. He would honk the horn and wave to every single person that was outside. He wouldn't, if he knew their name, he would yell it. If he didn't know their name, he would yell, "Hey, bud." And and everywhere I went in town, they were like, "Oh, your dad's great." And I'm like, "Yeah, all right, you don't live over there," but whatever, man. So it was good. In Cambridge, I was very blessed to grow up in that town that basketball was very, very, very important to the community. And, similar to Portsmouth in terms of didn't have the state championships that Portsmouth had, in the long ago era necessarily, but Cambridge had success in basketball. We sold out every game that I played. We sold out games before I got to school. And it'll sound crazy, but when we played the bigger home games, there would be scalpers outside scalping tickets to high school games because the gym only see 1,200, and there was nothing to do. Friday, Saturday night, man, that's where you were going. And if the team lost, I kid you not, you didn't go out in town. If I tried to go downtown to it was called Coney Island at the time, it's the diner downtown. You didn't dare set foot in there on a Sunday if you lost on Friday or Saturday. I mean, townspeople would just absolutely give it to you about how you played and how could you guys lose to them, and that was terrible. And so honestly, it was great because it really mattered, and it was just a great experience. I mean, I wouldn't want any of that over, other than the yard mowing, maybe.
Geno, did you play any other sports besides basketball?
Well, I played baseball until I was about 12 or 13. And what I found in baseball was my poor hitting drove my dad crazier than my poor basketball play. He had been a 2-sport guy, and he was a power hitting third baseman. He got drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates in round 62 or something, right? Mm-hmm. Where no one makes the team. And it was one of the last guys picked. but he was a power hitting third baseman in high school, and he was a basketball player. And he ended up being first team all American at Muskingum, and that was when there were no Division II schools. You either played small college or you played big school, and that was it. And he was on first team All American on the small school side as a 5'8" center, which is kind of crazy. But he had strong forearms, and so I had a tendency to bail out when guys threw anything inside. I mean, I just didn't feel like getting hit by the baseball. That didn't seem like a lot of fun to me. And he decided he was going to teach me how to hit. And so he took cinder blocks and lined them up at my heels and stood in front of the mound and rifled inside heat from 50 feet away. And if I mean, they say Don Baylor has the record for most hit by pitch. I have the record for most hit by pitch. And I mean, he'd drill me in the shoulder. I'd be diving out of the way. And then, of course, I'd get in the game. I've been hit 62 times this week. Like, I don't want to get hit again. And I would bail out, and he would lose his mind. And so when I turned 13, I was like, you know what, man, this is not for me. And I always was like the starting shortstop. I was a good fielder, not a very good hitter. And so I hung up the cleats pretty early.
Yeah, I saw your dad was a small college All-American. I think he finished his career at Muskingum with 1,717 points. And you finished your career at Ohio University with 1,752. So you outdid your dad.
Well, Jeff, just so you know, I knew that number. I don't pay any attention. I don't care about. I don't have any trophies up about individual stuff that I may have done as a player. But when he was a senior in college, they played at Ohio University, and Ohio University won the Mid-American Conference in 73-74. And he was at Muskingum. Ohio University won the game by about 9 points. It was a competitive game, no shot clock, no three-pointer. And he had 15 points in the game. And so when I signed at Ohio, he made sure I knew about we played down there, MAC champs, and I was at Muskingum, and we gave him a game, and they were winning, I think, at halftime. I mean, he had the box score at one point, so I saw it. He told me about how he scored 15 points. So my junior and senior year, where I averaged 19, I would just immediately listen, my average night was better than your career high over there. So I don't want anything you got to say. So I knew his numbers. Trust me, that was always in the back of my mind because I didn't want to hear it anymore. I mean, my goodness, he was. Yeah, you had to meet my dad to know him. He was one of these guys like. If he fell down, he would have rolled 3 blocks. I mean, it was a complete circle. I mean, he's short, fat guy, round cheeks, got 8 million stories. Every one of them's funny. He was the type of guy who could make fun of you right to your face and you would laugh. You just didn't take offense to it. He was just he knew everybody. I mean, he knew everybody because he just was a people person. And he could ride you now. I mean, he could ride you. He'd find a button and he would just start getting underneath that fingernail and going to work on you with the bamboo splinters. And if he found a weakness, I mean, it would not stop. But he was a lot of fun. He really was. So, but anytime I could get him shut up, it was great. I'm going to tell you one story, and this will be it on my dad as far as stories. But so he's coaching at Muskingum, and he came over and was my assistant. And we had a couple pretty good years. And I left and went to Kent State as an assistant. And he took the head coaching job. Well, he had a good team for 3 or 4 years. And towards the end, I mean, he had retired from teaching high school. So his career's about over. And he basically had kind of hung it up. And recruiting is really hard at Muskingum. All the Division III schools, it's hard. Muskingum won't repackage. They won't waiver in admissions. And I mean, let's be honest, like you look at the Division IIIs that win, they win because of admissions and financial aid. I mean, you've seen like, Marietta went from couldn't win a game to all of a sudden ranked in the top 10. They should give the championship trophy to the admissions and the financial aid office because that's who wins those games. So anyhow, he has run out of significant talent. He had a few good players, but not enough. So like his next to last year, they are awful. And I mean, just god awful. They go 1-24.
Wow.
So he is at the Illinois game, and my brother Dustin's the assistant at Akron, or at Akron now, but he was the assistant at Illinois at the time. And they had some donors on the trip. And my dad gets to the game at Ohio State late in the year. Muskingum season's over, week or so to go till the Big Ten tournament. And the booster meets my dad, and he says, "Hey," he said, "Oh, nice to meet you." And my dad said, "Yeah, I coach." And the guy said, "Oh, that's great." He said, "Well, how'd your team do?" And Dustin said, without missing a beat, Dad goes, "Oh, hell of a year. We had a hell of a year. 124." And the guy goes, "You 124 games? That's unbelievable." He goes, "Oh yeah, hell of a year, 124." And the guy walked away thinking he won 24 games and he was 1-24. I mean, I don't even know how you think that up. Like nobody else could come up with that. And it was hysterical. And
great.
Dustin's like, "Yeah," he's like, "This booster," he's like, he walked away. He's like, only Dad could spin it to be something, high, instead of embarrassing. So, yeah, he was a funny dude, man. He was a funny dude.
That's awesome. I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking about your dad, and my head is going, could your dad coach in today's game? And you can answer if you want to, but his ability to communicate and his ability to understand the value of relationships, he could absolutely coach in today's game.
I think today that's what it's totally become because, I think a long time ago, and I say a long time, when I first started, there wasn't a ton of information out there on coaching. You kind of knew your system, right? So like what Collins and I did at Shawnee State was what I did when I played at Ohio University for Larry Hunter. I didn't know any other system. That was a system we played. We had a ball screen cover. We hard hedged every ball screen. That was it. That was the end of the story. And if the other team scored, he got on us about not playing harder. And that was what it was. It was no like we're going to make an adjustment. We had no. Our adjustment was you play harder. That was our adjustment. And now with I hate to just point to the internet, but I mean, you look at what's out there. I mean, you could go on Twitter, you can go on YouTube, you can go wherever you want. You can find 700 out of bounds plays that'll all look pretty good and make sense to you. And you can go implement a couple of them and they might work. And ball screen coverages, we could spend this whole podcast. I could do a 2-hour thing on 6 or 7 different ball screen coverages that we have at Shawnee State or that we have, at Stony Brook that we didn't even know were possible, or I didn't when I was at Shawnee State starting as a young coach. So I just think there's a lot more information out there. So it's pivoted away from who knows what to really who can get the guys to want to play together and who can get the guys being committed to something that's a little bigger than themselves, because the real challenge is post-game. Like we play Monday night against Marquette, okay, and we play at like 8:30 on FS1. And at 10:30, when I come in the locker room to address the team, their phones, which they'll have to turn off because I make them turn their phones off before the game, but they're going to turn their phone on after I'm done. And at 10:45, they're going to have 15 people that have hit them. It's going to be their high school coach that thinks they should have shot more. It's going to be a parent who thinks they should have played more. It's going to be a AAU coach that thinks they're playing the wrong position. For every guy that doesn't score 20 points. Now, the 1 or 2 guys that get a hot hand and light it up, their people will think that our system's the greatest system ever until game 2. So, these kids are getting hit with so much stuff. Like when I played in college, my parents they listened to games on the radio if we were on the road. We weren't on TV every night. And if we were on TV and we didn't play well or I played poorly, I mean, I didn't call home or have text messages giving me, to be quite honest, bad info, because the people that are in your inner circle as a player, they love those players, as they should, way more than they love the program or the school they're playing for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so they're looking at it solely from, I love player A and most of the people in that circle didn't root for Stony Brook a year ago. Those kids were somewhere else. We only have 4 returners. And then now all of a sudden they're on our team. And so they would like Stony Brook to win, but we've got to create a culture where the players really solely care about winning and the accolades come secondary, because when you win, you get the player of the year and the first team all league and the all defensive team and the, different freshman of the year, things like that. And when your team doesn't win, you don't get those things. And it can be difficult to make sure you have the right people in the locker room that understand that. And I'm not mad at the people in their circle. They love the player. And, and that's what they should do. But, the players have to manage outsized noise that players did not have to manage prior to the TV and cell phone and everything else that's going on. And then they get on Twitter and get smacked around by a fan who thinks they played poorly or, stuff like that. And so there's a lot of things these kids have to deal with that it's the hardest time to ever play a college Division I sport is today than it's ever been because of all the outside noise and the negativity that they can get wrapped up in about role or playing time or performance.
Right.
Geno, how do you make that circle of your coaches and your players small enough to get them to buy into that message?
Well, that is the $1 million question, and that can be really difficult. I think it has to start for us, and we're lucky because we can recruit who we want. If you're a high school coach, listen to this, you're at the mercy of the gene pool, I guess. But colleges, we're out and we put a huge priority on kids that first off don't have issues off the floor. A year ago, we lost in the championship game in overtime to Charleston. And our team had 13 kids on it. 11 of them had over a 3.0. 4 of them got their MBAs last year. And when you're dealing with kids that are high-level students and, care about their future, you can typically win that kid over to the team concept a little easier than the kid who's coming in solely thinking, well, I'm going to be an NBA first-round pick. And I would love to have an NBA first-round pick. I'd coach a whole heck of a lot better if we have one. Right. But the reality is we've had Division I basketball at Stony Brook for 25 years. We've had 2 players that have suited up in an NBA game. Neither one of them is playing in Asia and is a great player. Great player, Jameel Warney, and great person, and decided to go play internationally because he could make a lot more money than he could make on the two-way G League, NBA thing. And the other player we have, Mohamedou Gueye, who is an awesome story. Mo is doing the two-way thing, and he'll continue it for a year or two. He played about 15, 20 games for the Toronto Raptors last year. But the point is, the NBA is drafting 17 and 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids that are young, that have potential. They're drafting European guys. They're going to draft a freshman at North Carolina that averages 5 a game, but has all this physical upside before they're going to draft a guy who averages 20 a game. And we try to explain to our guys that, quite frankly, your points per game are not what's going to get you noticed, and it's not what's going to give you a chance to play professionally. And we have several guys playing professionally in Europe, but I think our culture of winning has helped set all that up. And so we really try to lay out, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Here's who we've had. This is how our team has done. This is the development, and our program's really been built on development. We've lost 7 guys in 5 years to high major schools. And I could run through all 7. One of them, we were his only scholarship offer. One of them picked between us and I hate saying the school, but a place that, I kid you not, if I told you there was $1,000 check, Jeff, all you got to do is drive there, you'd refuse to drive. It's such a bad place. They weren't picking Stony Brook over, I could go to Duke or Stony Brook. I'll go to Stony Brook. It isn't that. It's, I can pick Stony Brook or a Division II school. We've had 2 guys that's happened with that have turned out to end up their career playing at the Power 5 level because they got better. So, I just really feel like for us, it's a developmental program. We've had 3 guys in it, one each year, the last 3 years, who have left us and gotten a 6-figure NIL deal at a high major. So our sell and recruiting is, if you come in and you're willing to work, this is the success that this player has had. We see a lot of you and him in terms of, this is what you've done to this point, this is what he did. And then honestly, when they struggle with attitude or any of that stuff, there's really only one solution, and it's not play them. And I hate to say that, but generally the bench is the only thing that gets anybody's attention. So, we've had guys that, if they don't have assignments in, we have shelved them, not let them practice. Obviously, you don't practice, you don't play. I am all over body language police. Our staff, I mean, I hate pouty faces. I hate guys not huddling on free throws. We acknowledge passes. And so we really, I mean, and there's that NBA study, you guys are probably aware of it, that did the high five study. It's several years old now, but basically the point of the study was this, and this is what they found. They studied every team in the preseason, how many high fives that team had on the court, and they charted them. At the end of the year, the teams that were higher end were playoff teams, and the teams that were at the very bottom of the high fives were lottery teams. And you can find it. I mean, it's out there. ESPN, places like that would have the study. So we share that with our team every year. Now, you can't high five your way to 20 wins, but I do know that if you aren't going to put an emphasis on chemistry and body language and teamism, for lack of a better term, you have no chance to be successful. So we have to do the right stuff and then hope we make enough jump shots to win. And so I think that's how we try to address it. That was kind of a long-winded answer, but it's such a tricky question. And in today's era, we have 9 first-year guys.
Yeah.
So, I know Coach Collins, when he started at Shawnee State, I mean, they were a junior college, and you had a whole new team every year.
Absolutely.
And honestly, we have a whole new team every year. I mean, I walk in the locker room and 9 new faces out of 13 guys, man. Like, we need name tags for the first 2 weeks. It's craziness. And it's going to be like that every year until my career's over, because the NCAA has got open transferring, and with the NIL and the transferring, I mean, it's just what it is. We'll have 9 new guys next year too, irrelevant of their experience. You lose the guy that puts up big numbers because they leave. And the other thing that's changed, kind of gone are the days of we suffer and succeed later. Most of the guys on my team played at multiple high schools. Almost all of them played at multiple club teams. And that's honestly I've got a couple big gripes with the youth system. One being, these kids, like, I'll play for Jeff's team this weekend, but Jeff, I didn't shoot enough. Or you had me playing the 2 spot, and I'm a point guard. That's my only way I'm going to get recruited. So now I go play for Coach Collins' team. And then I don't like that because I had to split time with so-and-so. And now I go play for this other team later in the summer. And then the other thing that's just disastrous with that is they go to these tournaments and they lose the game. And what do? We play again at 2:00. I mean, the real world, we lose on Saturday. We got to sit around with that thing for 4 days.
Right.
They don't wait 4 hours, and then they're playing, and then they got a bracket. I mean, it's comical. Hey, we're in the silver consolation bracket on court 11. Come on, man. If you get beat, hit the car, hit on home. It's over. Right. High school, you don't get to lose in the tournament and go find the consolation bracket. So I think the youth system has set these kids up for difficulties in many ways. And I think the youth basketball is much more set up for the adults running it and profiting off it than the youth kids that are playing. That's my opinion.
Do you feel like, Geno, kids like that, when you go recruit kids and you're seeing these kids that are played on multiple AAU teams and multiple high schools, is it make it difficult now for you to that incoming high school kid versus the transfer versus somebody a little bit more experienced that can handle the grit that they're gonna have to play for you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we definitely have been transfer heavy with 4-year kids, with junior college kids. I mean, I actually like the prep school kids. The nice thing about the prep school and the junior college kids, they're removed from, because if you play on for any of the quality club teams, and there are some of those guys do an awesome job. It isn't every single one that's an issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I play on one of the premier teams, those dudes fly all over the country. They stay in the nicest hotels. They eat the nicest meals. They got Nike jerseys, Jordan jerseys. They got as nice of stuff as they're going to have when they play for anybody. So I think they get that experience. And now you send me to a prep school, and 99% of the prep schools, facilities aren't awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Meals are a struggle. They're living in a room with 2 roommates.
Right.
And they have a post-game meal. They might get a ham sandwich on the bus for the ride home. In junior college, as we know, I mean, that's really going to be on the lower end of the budget. So for us, to your point of the grit guys, I love those guys. I mean, I love those guys that have had it really hard for a few years, because they almost get forgotten in a way, because when they're coming out of high school, they're winning high school games. And then the other part is just the crowds, right? If you go to a good high school basketball game with Division I prospects in it, there's probably a really good crowd at the game.
Right.
You roll up on a prep school game one day. There won't be, 90% of them, there's no one there. This just looks like a rec center game, and there's Division I players all over the place. But they're a year older. They've been humbled a little bit by the experience not being as glamorous as what they're used to, and a lot of them, like if they've qualified, they don't even go to school. They're just working out all day. So their skill packages get better as well. So yeah, we've definitely been transfer heavy, but I don't know that that'll slow. I thought it would when the COVID year went away, because that's phased itself out now.
Right.
But now with you don't have to sit out anymore. Obviously there are kids. If Shawnee State had a kid, which they actually did a few years ago, the big fella, that was player of the year. If he wanted to transfer Division I, they're everybody's lined up a mile long when he wants to leave, right? So it doesn't matter where you play anymore. NAIA, Division III, Division II, Division I, they're all 1-year deals at this point. And I wonder at what point the parents step in and start squeezing kids about graduation, because you transfer around, you're losing credits. And if you're not going to graduate, don't let basketball use you. Use basketball to get the degree and get on with a quality life. And I think that's a little. Right now, people are so excited that they can transfer and go play where they want to play. But what happens when you're 23 and you're not playing anymore?
Right.
Yeah, a lot of stuff you're talking about, Geno. I started thinking about Tony Bennett at Virginia, and from what I took from his interviews is like he didn't really like the state of the game, and maybe you mentioned how it's as hard as it's ever been for a Division I player. I think it's also as hard as it's ever been for a Division I coach. How do you feel about that? Is that something that makes you question if you want to stay in coaching, or are you to that point? Have you ever had those thoughts?
Well, our fans have those thoughts about me about twice a week. If I get gotten out of coaching, but I get 1,000,000% where Coach Bennett was, and unbelievably great person. And it's funny, we played them at their place. And I don't know him. I'd never met him. So we had security. And this has always kind of made me chuckle, because we go these games, and I'll have a security person meet me at the bus and escort me to the locker room at Virginia. And all I'm thinking is, my man, we're going to lose by 25. Ain't nobody going to be mad at me. I'm safer than I've ever been. I'm in danger in home games. Like, I need support at the home game. I don't need anybody tonight. And so that, I joke with the guy a little bit, and we get talking, and I said to him, I said, Coach Bennett seems like a really good guy. I'm sure he's an easy guy to root for, because this guy won't leave. We get there an hour and a half before, and he's like my shadow. I can't get rid of him if I want to. And he said, you know what, Coach? He said, my wife had cancer, and sadly she had passed. And he said, every time he found out, he said, I have no idea how he found out. He said, he got my number. He called me at home. Every time he's seen me, he's asked me how I'm doing. He had checked on the guy's wife. Like, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I would like to think that I'm a relatively good person. But the level of care that Tony Bennett had for a guy who's doing visiting team security, and they had 20 security people there.
Yeah.
I don't know how he found out about it, but that once I heard that, I rooted for Virginia harder than anybody, because I mean, what a good person. And I get where he's at. This is why the job's gotten hard. You develop a player, they get good, and they leave. And then you have to develop the next player. And the fan base is expecting you to win big every year. And it becomes at some point a cyclical thing where it's really hard to stay up. When you win, it's really, really hard to stay up because you're going to lose guys. And I think the other thing that's made it exhausting is the recruiting. So in the old days, which I say old days, about 5 years ago, we would sign 3 or 4 guys in the fall, and maybe we would have one disgruntled guy in the spring who didn't play as much as he wanted. He wanted to go to Division II, and he might leave. Very rarely did you have a guy, go first team all league and I'm out of here. Might happen, but not all that often because they had to sit out. Now, last spring, we signed like 7 or 8 guys. So as soon as the season ends for us, we played all the way to the championship game, which was mid to late March. We were constantly on an airplane to go recruiting, had a recruit on campus. The visits are 48 hours, so they come in with their families. They're here for 2 days. Then we got the next kid coming in. That did not end until we completed our roster. This past year, we completed our roster on June 1st. So there was 0 break. And if you're at Virginia to try to get, or, any power school, but you're at Virginia, to sign the guys they got to sign in November, they're begging those guys all along because they're top 100 players. So everybody's recruiting them. So the recruiting went from, we used to 5-6 years ago, to be quite honest with you, the entire month of May was kind of a recovery month. And you kind of got a week or 2 in June to get your sea legs under you. And then July recruiting happened and the team came in for summer workouts. It has become a 12-month-a-year job. You might catch a week, start of June, if your roster is set. And that's it. And you can just forget it. And we're going to be in that mode every year until I'm done coaching. So do I think at some point I will wear out on that? 100%. The race will be, do I wear out on it before the fan base wears out on us coaching them? Yeah, I mean, it's just different. I mean, the grind for recruiting is night and day. And you have to re-recruit all the guys on your team. So we have end of the year meetings, season ends. Eugene Collins averaged 7 a game. We need him back. But he's mad. He was our 6th man. He didn't get a start. So we got to re-recruit him. Now, that was a great example. He wasn't that good. He'd have probably been our 12th man. I should have done that. But, and so we got to re-recruit that guy, because if he leaves, we got to go get another rotational guy. So it's everybody, and all the kids' families are considering, well, is it best to stay or is it best to leave? And they've shortened the portal window to 30 days. It was 45, and 2 years ago, it was unlimited for grad students. The rules were set up so poorly 2 years ago. We had 5 grad students. We could have had 4 of them started. They could have come to Stony Brook in the summer, done every summer workout, and then on August 25th, the day before school started, all went to a different school and just said, forget it. I'm not going to come back. I got a chance to go over here. I'm going to go there. And we couldn't have replaced any of them.
Wow.
And so finally they tightened up the grad student piece of it. And initially the reason the rule was that way was I think the NCAA felt like, well, if you're going to grad school, you should have the freedom to go wherever you want to go and get your grad degree. I have no problem with that. That makes total sense. But once you show up for summer workouts and you're on the team, How
Right.
can you leave? I mean, a year ago, Chris Ledlam did summer workouts at Tennessee. He was at Tennessee and in the middle of July left and went to St. John's and played for St. John's.
Man.
So, if you're at Tennessee, maybe you can recruit, maybe you can replace a guy who ended up being a starting 4-man at St. John's and was a really good player, by the way. Like maybe at Tennessee, there was a guy floating, but I don't know who's available in July that's any good. Anybody I've ever got tape of in July is to fill a roster spot, and they're not good enough. And I don't care what level you're at. So, that rule luckily has changed. But with the portal, it's what it is. We're going to be recruiting 12 months a year.
Geno, I think you can coach as long as you wanted to, just because you've always had great humor, even in some tough situations, job changes. Your ability to roll with things are better than anybody that I've been around. And I mean, you was even that way when I coached with you. Just the ability to move on to the next play, move on to the next situation with humor, which is not like most people.
Well, I try to have fun. I think it's really important for the players to have a good experience.
Yeah.
That I don't want to go to dinner with them tonight. I don't want to take them to breakfast. I'm not trying to hang out with them.
Right.
But I want them when they're around to have a smile on their face and feel good about their experience. And so we joke around with them. We try to have fun. I mean, it was Jeff, if they would have mic'd up Eugene and I when we were at Shawnee State, we probably both would have been run out of coaching for some of the stuff we said to them guys. But, that's what makes it a good experience. For the players, I really believe that. And I think that we sometimes make too much of the sports world. We're not curing cancer. We're trying to make one more shot than you.
Right.
So some nights that ain't going to happen. And I always look at basketball this way. And, we can run the best executed play in the world. And we throw it to Jeff on the wing and he's wide open and he misses it.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily bad offense. And then we come down and we dribble it too much and we almost turn it over and they strip us and we pick it up and we throw it to Jeff and he banks in a shot from the top of the key and we get rewarded with 3 points. That wasn't necessarily good offense. So, I think that you have to make sure that guys understand that what we're chasing is progress, not perfection. And that's them on a day-to-day basis. That's our team on a possession-to-possession basis. And you got to have a short memory because about the second you think you're pretty good in this sport, man, you get humbled quick. And I think you're always better when you got a little chip on your shoulder. And I don't want it to be misery for them or for me by coming in. And, I don't ever want it players versus coaches. And we try to challenge them and we ride them pretty hard. But we don't have guys wanting to quit in the middle of the year, that either. So I think that's really important.
Geno, you touched on your development of players earlier. I think immediately a lot of people will think about getting bigger, faster, stronger, skill work, but also part of that development is, the neck up. The mental and emotional side. How do you guys work on the development of that? Do you guys have a mental performance coach or sports psychologist on staff? And what role do they play in the development of your players?
Yeah, no, it's super important, and I think, and obviously with the book, the journal that you guys put out, I would say a couple things, right? First off, it's never been more important than it is right now, mental health, because it's so out there and openly talked about, and I think it's gotten more mainstream. Kids aren't as uncomfortable having a conversation about how they're feeling or thinking. We do have a sports psychologist. Does more with individuals than the collective team. They have had sessions with the team, but it's been more of a one-on-one program here at Stony Brook. We also have 2 mental health counselors that are full-time athletic department employees that used to work on campus in the counseling center on campus and athletics. Hired 2 of them and they have office hours every single day. And there are athletes down there from, I don't even know. I mean, I'd say 9 to 5, but it seems like they're down there longer. I don't really know. They stagger the hours. So our kids have access to people to talk to. And what I try to do as a coach is make sure they understand that I have enough of an understanding of this that I can tell when you're not on your baseline, if that makes sense. Like if you are not, if something seems off, I have a fairly good radar for that.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a certified professional. I don't necessarily have any idea how to get you back to where you need to be at your best. So we really have, and we've done this several times, we have recommended to multiple guys, even this year, that they needed to get in. They needed to go in and speak to someone. And I've told them, go in there. Don't say anything. I don't know. Stare at the wall. Do whatever makes you feel better. But go. We have professionals, and it's free. Why would you not go to people who have done this for 20, 30 years that have helped our players in the past? Because it boils all down, and this is, I didn't come up with this, obviously, but mind right, game right. And if your mind is in a bad place, you have no chance to perform for us or yourself. And it doesn't matter why that is. It could be basketball related. And a lot of times it's stuff we don't even have any idea of unless they clue us in. I don't know they broke up with their girlfriend. I don't know that their aunt is having health problems unless they tell us. Right. And a lot of times they're not quite comfortable enough to just come in and say, hey, coach, I need to talk to you. Yeah, what's up? Hey, I got a situation at home. I would love them to do that. And some of the guys do that. But a lot of the guys just kind of hold it in and it kind of can fester. And then you notice that, man, something's off with something's going on. And then you go have a conversation and they'll tell you, where they might not tell you. In either case, we try to get them over. But, you know, like the journals, what we've started with our guys is really encouraging them. And I think this is the value to me anyway. There's no wrong answers in the journal.
Right.
It's how you feel. Like, this isn't a, hey, I really should say I get a point for this, whatever, you know, whatever the column might be today. Maybe I did what I was supposed to do. Maybe I didn't, or I didn't eat a lunch like I was supposed to, or I didn't do this. And they're the only ones that know. And no one's looking over their shoulder, not grabbing the journal and saying, well, how'd you do today? Now, I might generally say, hey, man, how's things going? Man, you look great. Hey, you're playing well. Hey, you doing okay? Hey, what's going on? Those kind of conversations. But I think the journal gets them thinking. I like the fact that you guys threw the sports quotes in there from famous coaches. Now, some of them I chuckled when I saw the Bear Bryant one, to be quite honest, because I don't think I have a player that has any idea who Bear Bryant is. Zero. These guys, man, like they're so young. It's crazy. We got guys in 2005, 2006. And I'm like, my man, I was like 30. I was like 4 jobs ago. I don't even know who it was. But you know, they're kids, and they need to learn how to think and then evaluate their own thoughts. And so I think it's been a positive, and we're relatively new into it, to be honest. Like, it's something that we've just kind of started with. And I'm not chasing them down to make sure they do it to perfection. I want them to want to do it. Right. And it's an avenue. And I think, like a lot of the things that you do for players, whether it be come in to get extra shots, come in and get an extra weight workout in. The guys that want to be special, the guys that really want to be good, they're going to do everything in their power to be special and be good. And I think the journal helps them do that. That's the reality. Now, do I think every single guy is giving 100% maximum effort into it? Well, probably not. But we don't have 100% of our guys coming in to get extra shots tonight at 9 p.m. either. So, it becomes a personal decision. And we really want to make sure that the guys have opportunities to do some real reflection. And I think that was I don't know that was the whole point of the book. I shouldn't speak for you guys, but like, as I have gone through it, it's like, you want people to think. You're not telling them necessarily what to think. You're encouraging them to think. That's what I took.
Right. Yeah, I think it creates some accountability and, just to put some thought into your mindset and your habits and your routines. And we have a thing called a goal habit mismatch. And, we have a lot of high school athletes that say, hey, I want to be a Division I athlete. So okay, let's sit down and see what your habits are saying, and oftentimes there's a mismatch. Your habits don't match your goals, So
yeah, Jeff, I mean, that should be up on our locker room wall. I mean, it's 1,000,000% true. Like the habit goal mismatch is one of the great problems with all of us, right? I mean, we all have goals. I mean, I got guys, I want to be first team all league. Okay, that's great. What time did you go to bed? Oh, you're playing video games till 3 a.m. You came in, you look lethargic, and you practice like crap. Well, that is not exactly player of the year type stuff, and no, the habits. I think all of that stuff. And I some of it's not that tricky, right? I mean, you guys kind of hammer home the attitude of gratitude. I mean, which, listen, I mean, that makes total sense to all of us when you hear it, but you kind of keep that theme is through the journal. I mean, you see that time and time again. And I think so many times what the athletes are thinking about themselves, you'll see it on the floor. If a player is in a bad spot mentally for whatever reason, they don't perform well. And at the end of the day, they're Division I athletes. They're not only getting a scholarship in today's era they have this stuff called cost of attendance. They have these academic bonuses. Every single player on my team, they're all getting like $10,000 spending money. I mean, because we paid all the expenses. Mm-hmm. So that's $10,000. So it isn't 1997 when I was in school and I didn't have $2.
Right.
And I took out a student loan on a full scholarship. So I had spending money because one of the other qualities of my dad, other than being a great coach, was he was a tight son of a gun. And so there was no money flowing south from Cambridge to Athens. I can tell you that. These guys, they've got everything at their disposal in terms of every resource you could ever want to be the best version of yourself. But the mental side of it dominates. It just dominates. And luckily, I think it's, like I say, it's been much more openly talked about. But to be quite honest, I don't think a lot of people have done what you guys have done, which is try to give people a tool to, do some self-reflection. Because a lot of the stuff is informational. Right, like you can get a book that's just, hey, you ought to boom, 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 and give them 700 ideas and examples. And there are examples in here, and there are ideas in here. But the majority of the material is sit down and think about your day, think about your thoughts, think about your goals, think about your habits, and write them down. And does that make sense? And how are you performing while all this stuff is going on? And I think that is the beauty of the book to me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that, Geno.
Oh, and I also appreciate, Jeff, you took care of the spelling because I know Geno couldn't have spelled any of this. Anytime I saw a multiple-syllable word, I knew that was Jeff.
And you would laugh. I was in charge of all the Bible scriptures and about 20 of the prompts. So there you go, partner.
That's good. You're making up for what you deserve. I mean, you ought to do 40 Bible verses. No, I'll tell you, I every time I think back to our time together, Geno, I just laugh, man. Like we had such a good time. There were so many memories that, like you talk about shared. Don Meyer was a coach, and he used to talk about shared suffering. Mm-hmm. Like the team had to have shared suffering, and that might be running sprints. That might be losing a game. That might be the team having a bad season, and now guys are working harder in the off season. And he talked about the beauty of shared suffering. And we had a bus company, and I'm not going to sell it out. Yeah. Shawnee State School, so everything was bid. Well, the bus company that wins the bid did not have many buses, so they could do it cheaper than everybody else. Jeff, we would be rolling down the highway, right hand to God, rolling down the highway, and the bus doors would swing open and slam shut. And it was really funny, except it was January. It was Arctic air going 70 miles an hour on the highway, just rushing right on us. So we would fight to not sit on the right side of the bus.
Yeah.
Cold air.
Yeah.
The bus, one night we're coming home, the guy stops. We're going to run out of gas. So we stop for gas. The driver looks at me and says, "Do you have a credit card? Because I don't have any way to pay for this." I'm paying for gas on the bus. Like Shawnee State, I'm making $40,000. I couldn't even eat lunch today. I'm paying gas on the bus. Those are my like Shawnee State memories, and those things would happen. And God, man, Eugene and I would just sit in there and we'd be laughing so hard we'd be crying. It was shared suffering at its finest. Yeah. Shared suffering.
That's fun.
I'm not going to sell his name out in case the company's still out there, but you know darn well who it was.
Absolutely. I said, Geno, make sure you got money on the credit card because you got diesel fuel to get on where pay you.
Oh, it's unbelievable. We're traveling a lot better than that at Stony Brook, man. I can tell you that. Doing that. Oh my God.
You guys said you fought for the prime seats. I'm assuming Donnelly never sat in one of the prime seats.
No, poor Donnelly. Donnelly was in the back of the bus, man. He was such a good dude, man. He worked his butt off, and he had a hard assignment because the reason the team was so good was we had 2 transfer guards, Andre Horton and Antoine Lavender. And I mean, they were fast on fast. Yep. And one of them signed at Akron. One of them signed at Indiana State. They ended up needing to go NAIA, so they came to us. And, I mean, they were as elite of guards. No kidding. Andre Horton, Antoine Lavender could have started for almost every Division I team I've coached in the last 15 years.
Absolutely.
Those 2 guys were electric. And poor Donnelly's out there got to guard one of them the whole day because it didn't matter. Like, sometimes I guard one guy and then, he gets hot. Maybe the next day I guard the other guy. It was a nightmare. He had to catch one of them guys every day, every drill. And he battled. He did battle. But there was a different level of speed, speed always wins, man.
Oh, yeah. Geno, you got anything to add before we wrap it up or anything to touch base on, talk about?
Hey, you're 2 sons coaching. I thought you would have been smart enough to get them out of the game, but I see they're both coaching it and loving it.
Poor parenting. That'd be my description. Poor parenting. I mean, Lenny used to run around with Darren, my older one, and now they're both, Darren's 30 this year, 29, 30. Like they've gotten old. It's really crazy. Somehow I've become the old guy at all our family functions with my dad, passing. And anyhow, Darren has always been a complete junkie. He just can't get away from it. And David, my younger one, has told me his entire life, I don't want to coach. I don't have any interest in coaching. So 2 years ago, he helped with the team here. And now he's Darren's assistant at a high school, Nordonia High School, up a suburb of Cleveland, Akron area, in between the two, actually. And I think there's a high likelihood of the 2 of them getting in some kind of a scuffle during a game this year. I don't know that it'll happen, but trust me, when the game's over on the ride home, it will happen. I don't know how that movie's going to play out. I have a feeling I know the ending, but we'll see. If they're both still intact and on staff at the end of the year, it'll be a good thing.
Great.
Well, that'll be like you and Dustin. So that that's the DNA that's coming out.
Well, Dustin and I, true story. What a great way to end with some positivity, Jeff. You want to be positive. So I play at Ohio University. So does Dustin. I'm a senior. He's a freshman. Mm-hmm. We got in so many little tussles during drills that by Thanksgiving, and understand we're both guards. It's not like we can guard 4 men or 5 men. We were banned from guarding each other in practice for the remainder of the year because it just turned into scraps. And
Wow.
Coach, you're ruining practice. He said some other things I'll leave off air, but he was like, "You're ruining. That's it. You guys are done. You guys are done. You are not allowed to guard him. We weren't allowed to switch. So, like, if it was like a guard screen, you had to fight through. You weren't allowed to switch. I mean, it was, hey, listen." There's a reason both he and I played Division I. It certainly wasn't size or skill or anything else. It was just kind of having some toughness and gutting it out, I guess. But yeah, I mean, poor. We'll see. We'll see how the Ford coaches do up at Nordonia.
There you go.
Yeah, I have a feeling they'll do just fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully. Man, I appreciate you guys having me on, and obviously, I just have a ton of respect. And Jeff, I just met you, but just a ton of respect for Coach Collins. I mean, not only just a super guy, but was a whale of a basketball coach. And I think that people that get involved and decide to do any research with the book, his background wasn't in teaching; it was working with troubled youth, and that really showed up in everything he did. And I think he really gravitated towards the guys that we coached that had issues. Those were the guys that were always the tightest with him, and that he was the tightest with. And he just has a knack for helping people that need help. That's the bottom line. So, I appreciate you having me on, and all the best to you guys with the endeavor.
Yeah.
Hey, good luck, man. Good luck. Be rooting for you. And here you get somebody you're not supposed to. Let's just make it Marquette, my man.
Hey, I appreciate it. And listen, if the first half goes bad, you can turn the channel. I'll still have to be there. So see how it goes.
All right.
All right, Geno. Nice to meet you, and thank you for everything. Appreciate your kind words.
Thanks.
All right, Geno. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.